Hey friends, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today we read Deuteronomy chapter 16. What y'all don't know is we just started this and our dog was very offended. He was not in the video, but he wouldn't just jump into my lap. He made me chase him, so he was super helpful.
It was funny. All right.
Okay, so today God is telling the Israelites the festivals that they are to observe when they move into the promised land. What it's kind of hard for them to understand because they have not moved in and they haven't lived this yet, and so God's telling them what they're gonna do. But I think it's kind of like with the board game, like you kind of got to jump in and do it to understand the importance and to understand what it looks like. But we have the privilege of, this is history. And so most of us have read other passages that show what this looks like. And so the Israelites at this part, I'm very fascinated with their festivals and their feasts. One thing in scripture, they will call like one feast like 3 different names. And so it can get confusing.
I mean, we have Thanksgiving Day, we have Turkey Day, we have, we call our holidays a
Christmas,
bunch of stuff.
seasons, greetings,
4th of July, Independence Day, Nathan's Hot Dog Day, because they do all that. So they call it a lot of different things, but we do that too. The point is that these celebrations served as reminders of all the Lord had done for his people.
You wanted to talk about that, didn't you?
I just think that's important.
He got excited.
Yeah.
I agree. And so in scripture, don't let it confuse you. God's spelling it out to us today in these, talking about these 3 festivals. What the Israelites don't know at this point, while they're still following the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, and God is in their presence, they don't understand what life is really going to look like. They don't know that they are going to get all of their allotments. They're going to live all over this promised land, spread out. And this is not Mississippi. This is not Louisiana. It is not flat. It is very mountainous and hilly. And so they are going to be spread out all over Israel. And these 3 festivals, they're going to have 3 different times of year where they're to travel to the temple to worship God. And that's when they will have their sacrifices. That's where they will bring their spotless animals, and they will have these feasts that Preacher Hubs preached on yesterday. Like when they meet together, this is like something they look forward to and cannot wait to do. He wants his bad.
He doesn't.
And so this is a big deal. And what they also don't picture is that their lives are actually going to revolve around these festivals and feasts. Remember, right now, they do not have planes, trains, and automobiles. They do not have a quick method to get to the temple. So for some of these people who live on the outskirts of the promised land, they will travel up to like 3 weeks to get to the temple so that they can worship God. And so we get a glimpse, we get to read through Psalms, we get to read through David's life. We get a glimpse into what this looks like. And they even have like this special playlist for when they travel. The Psalms of Ascent. They're a block of Psalms, and that's what they would sing. And that's what they would recite as they would travel to the temple. And it was a way to prepare their hearts to worship, to prepare their hearts to give offerings and sacrifices to God, and to meet together with their other believers, and to have this festival and this feast and this time of celebration. It was something that was anticipated all year long, that they would do a few times throughout the year, and it was a big deal. I think of David when in some of his Psalms, when he was on the run, that was one of the things that he could not do. He was hiding in the caves and he was in the mountains, and he could not go and offer sacrifices. And he said he would tell God in his own Psalms that he wrote that what can I give you except my words right here, and I think God accepted that beautifully. He knew David's situation.
Yeah. You can also see this in the New Testament when, Paul is really being attacked by the Jewish people, and Paul knows that if he goes to Jerusalem, because he'd already been warned, if he goes to Jerusalem, they're going to arrest him, and he is dead set on he is going to get back to Jerusalem for Pentecost. Like he is going back, and there's nothing that's going to stop him because that's what he was supposed to do.
Even though that could mean the end of his life.
Even though it did mean his arrest and his eventual death. So, okay, so there's 3 festivals mentioned here. Let's begin in verse number 1. It says, observe in the month of Abib and keep the Passover to the Lord your God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. So this is the very first festival they're talking about is the festival of Passover. It's the feast of Passover. The Lord is having this 7-day celebration that reminded people for the rest of their days that God was the one who set them free. So if we're kind of comparing this to one of our holidays, this is 4th of July. This is their 1776 where they are liberated and they become their own people.
Independence Day.
Yeah, so they were brought out of Egypt and God did this. Now what we find is, and I need you to take Wishbone again. What you find whenever you read through this is that they're celebrating this for 7 days. Verse number 3 says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread with it. That is the bread of affliction. Why? Because it's a reminder that affliction does not last forever. 7 days is a long time, but 7 days is not forever. And when we go to our New Testament, as the New Testament talks about so much of kind of what's going on, it puts for us just some insight into those days. Here's what the scripture says. For our light momentary affliction is but for a moment, but it is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And so the first festival was the festival of Passover. Notice that it says that at the very beginning of this in verse number 1 that the Lord their God brought them out of Egypt by night, which means the Lord didn't even have to wait for daytime. He can deliver his people even in dark times. The next festival is called the Feast of Weeks. You and I would probably know this festival better by calling it what it is. It's Pentecost. The Greek of that means the 50th. The Feast of Weeks is a celebration that happens 7 weeks after Passover. So Passover happens, then 7 weeks of 7 days is 49 days. On that 50th day, there's that next celebration, the Feast of Weeks. This one was like Thanksgiving in that it was a harvest celebration. So this comes at the end of like all of their reaping from all of their lands, and they've got all their crops in. So now they sit down and they have a special time to thank God because he has provided for us in the way where Thanksgiving is supposed to be our time where the crops have come in and, you know, we decorate with the cornucopias and the things on the table. We don't, but, you know, I know what a cornucopia is because I studied the Pilgrims.
You colored the page.
I did. And so, but it was like their Thanksgiving. So it was a big meal and it was exciting. And by the way, the tone of all of this is rejoicing. It's the celebration of these holidays that for the whole family, it's an invitation for the whole household and beyond to worship and to celebrate the goodness and the work of God in their lives. The last one it's going to talk about is the Feast of Tabernacles. This was kind of an odd one because this was another 7-day festival where the people would move out of their houses for about a week and they would build little structures, little tents, little lean-tos, and they would live in those things for 7 days. Why? It's like going camping in your backyard. Why would you do that? Because the Israelites spent 40 years wandering around, living in tents in the wilderness. And God took care of them every single day in that. And this was a way to show every family, hey, let's go back to the way things used to be. Let me live like this for a week and be reminded of how very much God took control and took help. So the idea was that during those 7 days, they may be laying in some like shack lean-to, okay? So their tabernacle, their tent, their little flimsy house, it may be flimsy, but their God is strong and he meets all their needs. And so what then happens is this 3 times a year, these Israelites are traveling to wherever God is to be worshiped. At Shiloh when there was a tabernacle there, and at Jerusalem when there was a temple there. They're traveling to go and worship in these places. And it says in verse number 16, it says, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Every man shall give as he is able. See, the men in the family were the ones who were supposed to lead out in worship. But listen, do you think reasonably any man left his family at home, if he's living on a farm in the middle of nowhere, that he went by himself to take care of this, to do all of this in Jerusalem, and he just left his family to fend for themselves? No, that's not how this worked. So when the man went, guess who else went? Everybody else. And so now he's leading his family, but he's also teaching his family by taking his family to the house of God, where they're now seeing all of their people doing the same things because they're part of a family that's bigger than their just little family at the house. They're part of the family of God. And that's why these festivals are important, and that's why they're part of their calendar, and that's why they're supposed to be written on their hearts as to why they do it. So when you read this, we're reading about a kind of society where God is creating a family. You keep reading. We'll see you tomorrow in chapter number 17. Bye.